Good afternoon. Welcome to the March edition of our Supply Chain Management webinar series. A few housekeeping things before we get started. During the presentation, if you have a question on your control panel, raise your hand. I will attempt to answer all questions as I get them. If I don't get your question answered, I will stick around at the end of the webinar to answer any and all questions for as long as it takes. In addition, after this webinar is over, in about an hour, you'll be able to see this webinar and many of our previous webinars by going to our website webinar page, where we have an archive of all of these webinars. All right, let's get started. Today we're going to talk about independent demand ordering systems. What we're looking at here are those items that you're responsible for maintaining an inventory of that are relatively inexpensive items. There are many small transactions that are costly to capture, and to get a resupply of this material, it's readily available and can be quickly replenished. So here's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at three different types of independent demand ordering systems that deal with these type items. The first one is a visual review system. Second is a two-bin system. And the third is a periodic review system. So here we go. Visual system. In every organization that has human beings working in it, there is one piece of inventory that you must have. If you don't have it, the organization will not function very long. So that material is no more than toilet paper. And if you think about it, toilet paper, the world runs on toilet paper. If you run out of it, it's a problem. It is cheap, it's inexpensive, easy to get, but we have to have an inventory of this during the working hours that people are in the facility. Now, you don't want to spend a lot of time and effort tracking inventory use of toilet paper. For this, I'm going to share with you a story from my own experience. It goes back to the mid-1970s when I was a buyer at EG&G Princeton Applied Research in New Jersey. We had about 400 people working there, and one of the responsibilities that I got when I became a buyer was I was in charge of cleaning supplies. Cleaning supplies also included toilet paper and all the stuff you needed for the different men's and women's rooms in the facility itself. We used to have a storage closet, something like this, although this is a very clean version of it, where all of this inventory was stored. Now, the toilet paper we used to purchase in 500 roll cases, really big boxes of toilet paper, not the type you'll find at one of these big box stores. This was industrial size purchasing of toilet paper. And the way the visual system worked, on Monday morning of every week, I'd go down to the cleaning supply cabinet. I had the key to the cleaning supply cabinet. The maintenance people had the key to the cleaning supply cabinet. And Howie Eldridge, our plant maintenance manager, had a key to that cabinet. And we'll come back to Howie in a little bit. I would go down there. I would look. As long as there were two boxes of toilet paper and they were stacked one on top of the other, I didn't have to do anything. When the cleaning crew used one box, they would take the box, throw it in the trash. I'd go down the next Monday, see that there was only one box, and I would then place a resupply order with our janitorial supply service, and they would deliver it on Wednesday of that week. Not a big problem. It worked pretty flawlessly. However, these systems, as you'll see, have some flaws that can creep into it. Now, back to my friend Howie Eldridge. You had to understand a little bit about the scenario in the mid-1970s. Howie was, to me, an old guy. Now, I was in my mid-20s. I had just gotten out of several years in the United States Navy, and Howie was an ex-Marine. He was an old guy. He was about 40 years old. That was old to me at that time. Tuesday morning one week, Howie comes into my office. He's got a full head of steam. He is mad, and his anger is directed at me. Now, he said, "Cathers, come with me." And I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Eldridge." Remember, I'm still a young guy. I have a lot of respect for authority figures. He takes me down to the supply room, and he opens the door, and he says, "Cathers, what do you see?" And I say, "Mr. Eldridge, I see 2 cases of toilet paper, sir." Howie walks over to the boxes of toilet paper and kicks the bottom box, and both boxes go sailing. You see, it turns out that the maintenance people, they had a new person on board, and the new person, when he took the last roll out of the box on top, he just took that box, put the new box on top of it, and then continued on. I never actually checked to see how much was in the box each week. In that, I learned a lesson. First of all, I was driving a small 1962 VW Karmann Ghia, and I made untold number of runs to the local Acme supermarket 2 miles away that morning to get toilet paper to keep us going until I could get our regular supply in. The second thing was, every week from that point on, when I went to check cleaning supplies, I always jiggled the boxes to make sure they were full. So, visual review system, easy to work. Even when it has problems, as I've described, you can recover from them pretty quickly and keep going. Now, so that covers visual review system. Now let's look at two-bin system. Two-bin system, same organization. We were a manufacturer of scientific instrumentation, electronic instrumentation. We had several hundred people working in production, and they used a wealth and variety of little screws and nuts and washers. A box of screws would weigh about 1.5 pounds. It would have 10,000 screws in it. It would cost us a grand total of about $2, and if I ever ran out, our hardware supply place was literally on the same block in Princeton as our facility was at. So what we did was a two-bin system. Outside of our stockroom window where people would come to get the kits of material, we had a shelving system that was a series of drawers, and the drawers were divided in half, as this picture shows. And what it was, people that worked in production would have little trays at their workstation with all the screws and nuts and hardware that they needed for the type of assembly they were building. When they needed more of that material, we didn't issue it to the job. We let them come to this cabinet system right outside our stockroom window and fill up their trays from the front part of the bin system here, the two-bin system. They were instructed that if there wasn't sufficient parts in the front bin, to take the bag of material, in this example, that was in the back, open up the bag, and put the reorder card in a basket that was right at the stockroom window. So they would open the bag, put the card in the tray, and once a week, the buyer who was responsible for that material would come through and pick up all of those cards and place the resupply order with our hardware place right down the block from us. When The hardware place did their delivery usually within 3 or 4 business days. Our receiving people would receive the shipment in. They would take that reorder card that had been attached to the bag and or the box. They would put it on that bag or box, issue the material to floor stock, and then put the new box or bag of material in the back section of the bin, and the process would start all over again. This was a pretty foolproof way of doing things. Now, I will tell you, from time to time, we had humans dealing with this. We had a lot of humans dealing with this, and the most frequent thing that happened, the card itself would get lost. They'd go and toss it into the tray and it'd fall on the floor, or somebody would open a door someplace and there'd be a gust of wind and it'd blow some of the cards off. This happened infrequently, and when it did, it wasn't a big deal. Once we found out that we were running low, we could place a reorder. It'd be in within 1 business week. And remember, we were carrying such large quantities. That box of 10,000 screws that I described would be over a year's worth of actual usage, but it was so cheap, we didn't mind having extra. So that's how a 2-bin system works. So now we've looked at visual review and 2-bin system. The last one we're going to look at is periodic review. The periodic review system, we have all seen this in action. You may not have recognized it when you saw it. When you go into the local supermarket, if you hit there on Monday or Thursday and you're in the bread aisle, you're liable to see the guy from the bakery who drives the bread truck. They're doing an inventory. He has a schedule. They show up on Mondays, they show up on Thursdays. Basically what they do when they show up there, the company that they work for has rented a certain amount of the shelving space in the bread aisle. The guy that is there to do the resupply takes a physical inventory with his scanner. You know, he removes the day-old stuff. He reorganizes everything. He creates an order based on the amount of shelf space they have, how much inventory they want to have of each of the items there. And then after he gets done that inventory, he goes out back, and from his bread truck, he literally pulls the order, goes in, and restocks all of the shelves. You'll see this working many different times in food stores, specifically in the dairy aisle and in the bread aisle, or where it's most obvious that it is happening. Now, what can happen? What can go wrong here? Well, we are here in the Northeast, and we do have winter. I mean, we're supposed to get 1 to 3 inches of snow where I am here outside Princeton, New Jersey tomorrow, the first day of spring. And one of the things that can throw off a periodic review system is when we have inclement weather, like the snowstorms we get in the wintertime, and it prevents the bread guy from getting there on his schedule. That's a point where you might find bread at a premium because they don't have a way to resupply it. But they're few and far between, and once the roads open up, the bread guy comes back, does the resupply, and the system is all back and running again. So, what we've looked at today are 3 ways to resupply inexpensive items that there are a lot of small transactions for that you don't want to try to maintain transactions for, like in the screws and nuts and bolts example, all of the screws that are needed at this one work center for this one day. So we use a system that is inexpensive, that is relatively foolproof, although as I've tried to share with you, there are ways that it can get messed up. And if you have a problem with getting resupply, it doesn't take too long to straighten it out by having your supplier do a quick delivery, or in the example of the toilet paper from EG&G Princeton Applied Research, having the guy that caused the problem make several runs to the local supermarket to resupply the inventory. So remember, if you're going to use any of these systems, the items have to be inexpensive. They are typically have many small transactions that are costly to capture. And to get a resupply of these items, it's readily available from either your supplier or from some other mechanism. Okay, that covers independent demand ordering systems for this month.